is going to play Theophy. And thank you, Lost. And Lola is our narrator again. And Rocky is Loki, who's looking great over there with those horns. And Vidal is here for Harold. And Muscle Spark, I think we're going to not press our luck with your sound. And I'm going to ask Grocky, I don't know when your giant comes in. You played one of the giants, but Skymere is who we need right now. And have you any idea? Because if he doesn't come in right away, you could play Skymere.
Okay, Skymere?
Yes. He comes in on page 31 of the PDF.
And what page are we on at the moment?
We're at, let me see.
28.
Yeah, we're at the near the top of 28, and Thor is growling an assent to continue on, and he to kind of do a synopsis. There was a big contest on who was going to build the fire. The Warlock being the last contestant, and it was already agreed that Thor and Loki would probably fail. But that was excusable. They had excuses. But the Warlock did not have any excuse. He was very confident, and his tools failed him. So he really lost face, and he kind of, Thor was quite displeased. So, that was a bit inconvenient for him. And so we're going to start the narrator's reading. Is everybody in place? And Rocky, did you find Skymere's part?
No, but when we get to it, I'll just read it.
Okay, great.
Okay, and also they have just decided to look for shelter. Thor growled an assent. They got back into the chariot and drove up toward the dark mass. Shay was silent, with the blackest of thoughts. He would leave his position as researcher at the Garridan Institute to go after adventure with a capital A, would he? And as an escape from a position where he felt himself inferior and closed. Well, he told himself bitterly, he had landed in another still more enclosed and inferior. Yet why was it? His preparations had so utterly failed. There was no reason for the matches not lighting, nor the book turning into gibberish. Or for that matter, the failure of the flashlight on the night before. Thialfi was whispering to him.
By the beard of Odin, I'm ashamed of you, friend Harold. Why did you promise a fire if you couldn't make it?
I thought I could. Honest.
Well, maybe so. You certainly rubbed the thunderer the wrong way. You'd best be grateful to Uncle Fox. He saved your life for you. He ain't as bad as some people think, I always say. He usually helps you out in a real pinch.
The dark something grew into the form of an oddly shaped house. The top was rounded, the near end completely open. When they went in, Shay found to his surprise that the floor was of some linoleum-like material, as were the curving walls and low-arched roof. There seemed only a single broad, low room without furniture or lights. At the far end they could dimly make out 5 hallways, circular in cross-section, leading they knew not where. Nobody cared to explore. Thialfi and Shay dragged down the heavy chest and fished out blankets. For supper, the 4 glumly chewed pieces of smoked salmon. Thor's eyebrows worked in a manner that showed he was trying to control justifiable anger. Finally, Loki said,
It is in my mind that our fireless warlock has not heard the story of your fishing, son of Jord.
Oh? That story is not unknown. but it is good that men should hear it and learn from it. Let me think.
Odin preserve us. I've only heard this 1,000,000 times.
I was guesting with the giant Hymir. We rode far out in the blue sea. I baited my hook with a whole ox head, for the fish I fish are worthy of a man's strength. At the first strike I knew I had the greatest fish of all, to wit, the Midgard serpent, for his strength was so great. 3 whales could not have pulled so hard. For 9 hours I played the serpent, thrashing to and fro, before I pulled him in. When his head came over the gunwale, he sprayed venom in futile wrath. It ate holes in my clothes. His eyes were as great as shields, and his teeth that long.
Thor held up his hands in the gloom to show the length of the teeth.
I pulled, and the serpent pulled again. I was braced with my belt of strength. My feet nearly went through the bottom of the boat. I had all but landed the monster when, I speak no untruth, that fool Hymir got scared and cut the line. The biggest thing any fisherman ever caught, and it escaped. I gave Hymir a thumping he will not soon forget. But it did not give me the trophy I wanted to hang on the walls of Thrungdrang.
Thjalfi leaned toward Shay, singing in his ear.
A man shall not boast of the fish that fled, or the bear he failed to flay. Bigger they be than those borne back to hang their heads in the hall. At least that's what Atlas Draper says.
Loki chuckled. He had caught the words.
True, youngling. Had any but our friend and great protector told such a tale, I would doubt it.
Doubt me? How would you like one of my buffets?
He drew back his arm. Loki ducked. Thor uttered a huge, good-natured laugh.
Oh, 2 things gods and mortals alike doubt. Tales of fishing and the virtue of a woman.
He lay back among the blankets, took 2 deep breaths, and seemed to be snoring instantly. Loki and Thjalfi also lapsed into silence. Shay, unable to sleep, let his mind go over the day's doings. He had shown up pretty badly. It annoyed him, for he was beginning to like these people, even the unapproachable and tempestuous Thor. The big fellow was all right, someone you could depend on right up to the hilt, especially in any crisis that required straightforward courage. He would see right and wrong divided by a line of absolute sharpness, chalk on one side, coal dust on the other. He became annoyed when others proved to lack his own simple strength. About Loki, Shay was not quite so sure. Uncle Fox had saved his life all right, but Shay suspected that there had been a touch of self-interest about the act. Loki expected to make some use of him, and not entirely as a butt of jokes either. That keen mind had doubtless noted the unfamiliar gear Shay had brought from the 20th century, and was speculating on its youth. Why had those gadgets failed to work? Why had he been unable to read simple English print? Was it English? Shay tried to visualize his name in written form. It was easy enough, and showed him that the transference had not made him illiterate. Wait a minute. What was he visualizing? He concentrated on the row of letters in his mind's eye. What he saw was a series of images suggesting writing an image for every letter of his name. These letters spelled Harold Bryan Shay to him. At the same time, he realized they weren't the letters of the Latin alphabet. He tried some more visualization. Man came out as 4 more of these arcane letters, but strangely, there were 4 of them. Something was wrong. Man, he vaguely remembered, ought not to have 4 letters. Then gradually he realized what had happened. Chalmers had been right, and more than right. His mind had been filled with the fundamental assumptions of this new world. When he transferred from his safe Midwestern Institute to this howling wilderness, he had automatically changed languages. If it were otherwise, if the shift were partial, he would be a dement, insane. But the shift was complete. He was speaking and understanding Old Norse, touching Old Norse gods, and eating Old Norse food. No wonder he had no difficulty making himself understood. But, as an inevitable corollary, his new knowledge of English had vanished. When he thought of the written form of man, he could form no concept but that of the 4 runic characters, manes, ansus, nauthes, dagus. He couldn't even imagine what the word would look like with the runes put into other characters, and he had failed to read his Boy Scout handbook. Naturally, his gadgets had failed to work. He was in a world not governed by the laws of 20th century physics or chemistry. It had a mental pattern which left no room for matches or flashlights or non-rusting steel. These things were simply inconceivable to anyone around him. Therefore, they did not exist, save as curiously shaped objects of no value. Well, anyway, he thought to himself drowsily, at least I won't have to worry about the figure I cut in front of these guys again. I've fallen so low that nothing I could do could make me a bigger fool. Oh, what the hell. Shay awoke. Chapter 5. Shay awoke before dawn, shivering. The temperature was still above freezing, but a wind had come up, and the gray landscape was curtained with driving rain. He yawned and sat up with his blanket round him like an Indian. The others were still asleep, and he stared out for a moment, trying to recover the thread of last night's thought. This world he was in, perhaps permanently, was governed by laws of its own. What were those laws? There was one piece of equipment of which the transference had not robbed him, his modern mind. Habituated to studying and analyzing the general rules guiding individual events, he ought to be able to reason out the rules governing this existence and to use them, something which the rustic Thialfi would never think of doing. So far, the only rules he had noticed were that the gods had unusual powers. There must be general laws underlying even these. Thor's snores died away into a gasping rattle. The red-bearded god rubbed his eyes, sat up, and spat.
Up all Aesirmen! Ah, herald of the turnips, you are already awake. Cold salmon will be our breakfast again, since your fire magic failed.
Then, as he saw Shay stiffen,
Nay, take it not unkindly. We Aesir are not unkind to mortals, and I've seen more unpromising objects than you turn out all right. Make a man of you yet, youngling. Just watch me and imitate what I do.
he yawned, and the yawn spread into a bristling grin. The others bestirred themselves. Thialfi got out some smoked salmon. However good the stuff was, Shay found the 3rd successive meal of it a little too much. They were just beginning to gnaw when there was a heavy tramp outside. Through the rain loomed a gray shape whose outline made Shay's scalp tingle. It was mannish, but at least 10 feet tall, with massive columnar legs. It was a giant. The giant stooped and looked into the traveler's refuge. Shay, his heart beating madly, backed up against the curving wall, his hand feeling for his hunting knife. The face that looked in was huge, with bloodshot gray eyes and a scraggly iron-gray beard, and its expression was not encouraging.
Ugh!
snarled the giant, showing yellow snags of teeth. His voice was a couple of octaves beneath the lowest human bass.
Excuse me, gents, but I've been looking for my glove. How about having a little breakfast together, huh?
Shay, Thialfi, and Loki all looked at Thor. The red god stood with feet wide apart, surveying the giant for some minutes. Then he said,
Good is guesting on a journey. We offer salmon, but what have you?
The name's Skymir, buddy. I got some bread and dried dragon meat. Say, ain't you Thor Odinson, the hammer?
That is not incorrect.
Boy, oh boy, ain't that something?
The giant made a horrible face that was probably intended for a friendly grin. He reached around for a bag that hung at his back, and sitting down in front of the shutter, opened it. Shay got a better view of him, though not one that inspired a more favorable impression. The monster's long gray hair was done up in a topknot with bone skewers stuck through it. He was dressed entirely in furs, of which the cloak must have come from the grandfather of all bears, though it was none too large for him. Skrymir took from his bag a slab of Norse bread, the size of a mattress, and several hunks of leathery gray meat. These he slapped down in front of the travelers.
All right, you guys, help yourselves. Let's see some of that salmon, huh?
Thialfi mutely handed over a piece of the salmon, on which the giant set noisily to work. He drooled, now and then wiping his face with the back of his huge paw, and getting himself well smeared with salmon grease. Shay found he had to break up his portion of the bread with his knife handle before he could manage it, so hard was the material. The dragon meat was a little easier, but still required some hard chewing, and his jaw muscles were sore from the beating they had taken in the last 24 hours. The dragon meat had a pungent, garlicky flavor that he didn't care for. As Shay gnawed, he saw a louse the size of a cockroach crawl out from the upper edge of one of Scrap's black fur leggings, amble around a bit in the jungle of hair below the giant's knee, and stroll back into its sanctuary. Shay almost gagged. His appetite tapered off, though presently it returned. After what he had been through lately, it would take more than a single louse to spoil his interest in food for any length of time. What the hell? Loki, grinning slyly, asked,
Are there turnips in your bag, hairy one?
Turnips? Nah. What you want with them?
A warlock.
Loki jerked his thumb at Shay.
Eats 'em.
What? No kidding? I heard of guys that eat bugs and drink cow's milk, but I ain't never heard of nobody what eats turnips.
That's how I get some of my magic powers.
Shay said with a somewhat sickly smile, and felt he had come out of it fairly well. Skrymir belched. It was not an ordinary run-of-the-mind belch, but something akin to a natural cataclysm. Shay tried to hold his breath until the air cleared. The giant settled himself and inquired,
Say, how come yous is traveling in Jotunheim?
The winged Thor travels where he will.
All right, but you don't have to get snotty about it. I just was thinking there's some relations of Rugnir and Geirrod that was laying for Thor. They'd just love to have a chance to get even with you for bumping off those giants.
Few will be more pleased than I to meet.
Thank you for the warning, friend Skrymir. Good is the questing, the guesting, when men are friendly. We will do as much for you one of these days. Will you have more salmon?
No, I had all I want.
Would it be impertinence to ask whither your giant ship is bound?
Well, I'm going up to Utgard. Utgard Loki's throwing a big feed for all the giants.
Great and glorious will be that feasting.
You're damn right it'll be great. All the hill giants and frost giants and fire giants together at once. Say, that's something.
It would give us great pleasure to see it. If we went as guests of so formidable a giant as yourself, none of Hungmir's or Gerard's friends would dare make trouble, would they?
Skrymir showed his snags in a pleased grin.
Them punks? Ah, they wouldn't do nothing.
He picked his teeth thoughtfully with thumb and forefinger.
Yeah, I guess you can come. The big boss, Utgard Loki, is a good guy and a friend of mine, so you won't have no trouble. If you'll clear out of my glove, we could start right now.
What?
Yeah, my glove. That's what you slept in.
The implications of this statement were so alarming that the four travelers picked up their belongings and scrambled out of the shelter with ludicrous haste, the mighty Thor included.
And this is where we're going to leave off for today. So, yeah, that was a fabulous Skrymir and Loki. And I think we need, let's try for Starananda, and I'd give $1, and hopefully Muspel Spark will have gone and come back and fixed his sound and be able to continue with the Defenders after this next story.